So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast with me, Craig Lewis. Now, this is the podcast where we tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. And even though Michelle bought me a new Garmin watch and some speedy trainers this week, we still want to hear your running stories and not about your VO2 max. We've had some fantastic guests on the pod in recent weeks, including Megan Boxall, who ran round the coast of Britain in a record time to raise money for a fantastic cause in the Samaritans, the 100-mile ultra runner and coach Abby Heffern, and Adam Rodriguez, who's now approaching the end of his quest to run an epic 55 marathons in 55 cities in a single year. And if that's not enough, we feature some brilliant stories on our Substack page, runningtales.substack.com. Most recently, that of my friend Joe Hardin, who's training for the formidable Vol State 100. Now, if you don't know, that's a Lazarus Lake race, so that tells you all you need to know, while simultaneously building up his Odd Duck running company, which includes him race directing, creating bespoke medals, and some very cool merch. We've also featured Owen Jones, the creator of Trailcube, a new kit storage organizer which pledges to ensure you'll never forget those vital bits of race equipment again. So please go and check out those podcasts on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube, or wherever else you find your podcasts. And do visit and subscribe to runningtales.substack.com. It is, after all, free. Which brings me to where we do need your help. If you could take a second to like and subscribe to this podcast, maybe even leave us a 5-star review, and best of all, tell all your running buddies about it, then we'd be so grateful. As I said, everything we do at Running Tales is free at the point of access. So maybe if you can back us a bit by donating as little as £1 via our Buy Me a Coffee page, buymeacoffee.com/runningtales. You can find that in the show notes, or maybe subscribe to our Substack for just £5 a month. You can get it for free, but there is the ability to back us in that way as well. So thank you so much if you're able to do that. Anyway, enough of that stuff. Let's get to this week's episode. And our guest is the incredible Ian Williams. Ian was born with a severe form of Spina Bifida, a condition which sees only 15% of those people who are born with it go on to walk unaided, let alone run. He's bucked that trend, though, and over the last 22 years has completed in 4 marathons and 2 ultramarathons. It's a journey demonstrated not only by those races he's finished, but by a scar on the base of his spine that shows the challenges he's overcome and which has helped him through some difficult times. Now, Ian's story isn't confined to just his own achievements. In 2004, he founded Fetcheveryone, an independent UK running community which has more than 100,000 users today. In a world of Strava and Instagram influencers, it's a reminder that running is ultimately all about community. So, folks, without any further ado, let's welcome Ian to the Running Tales podcast. Hi, Ian. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. What a lovely intro. Thanks very much for that.
Oh, no worries. You're more than welcome. And yeah, I really want to go over some of those fantastic achievements that you've done over the years. But I think first of all, just for people's general understanding and so on, I wondered if you wouldn't mind just perhaps explaining what spina bifida is and how it affects people.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but basically, what happens is the nerves in your spinal column, at the base of your spine or that sort of area, they don't stay nicely contained within your spine. They can actually protrude outside of your body at the point, but you're developing in the womb and when you're born. And obviously, with them being in such a precarious situation, it often leads to sort of paralysis in the lower limbs, incontinence, lots of difficulties. There are also sort of potential sort of follow-on things like hydrocephalus. That's where you get a lot of fluid in your head, and you have to have shunts and things to just help you with that. So the statistics you mentioned early on, I think the things are a little better, quite a lot better now actually. But back in the 1970s, the early 1970s, in fact, quite often babies were heavily sedated and just left to pass away. So in a lot of ways, I'm lucky that I wasn't just sort of allowed to slip away at that point. And yeah, I think they did a study of babies born in the early 70s, and only something like 45% of them lived into anything like adulthood, and an even smaller percentage of them were able to walk without any kind of aid or whatever. So I feel very lucky. In my case, all I have to show for it, literally all I have to show for it, is that little scar. It's about the size of a 50 pence at the back of my at the base of my spine. I was operated on when I was 6 days old. But these days with the developments, they can actually operate on babies inside the womb. That's my understanding of it, which is just amazing, really. But I guess it's sort of the sooner you can get to something like that, the better. So um, my dad likened it to winning the pools twice, and he was told by the doctors that the chances were not great for me at that point. So, but interestingly, when I was growing up, he would still enter the pools. So it's like he was trying to go for the hat trick of wins somehow.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, he never managed that. But yeah.
And in terms of, um, I suppose your own health and fitness growing up with that operation, was everything inverted commas normal for you after that? Were you able to walk and run as anybody else in your class at school or wherever was?
I'm not sure about as well as everybody else, but we did the 100 meters in the first year of comprehensive school, and my time was something like 19.9 seconds. I was fairly slow at that point, but yeah, and growing up in the South Wales valleys, rugby was quite a big thing. And I remember just having it hammered into me to be really careful playing rugby.
Yeah.
But a few kind of hands in the face from people trying to get past me with a ball. I decided I didn't really like playing rugby all that much anyway. So yeah, I kind of got involved. I wasn't necessarily the most sporty type. Played a lot of cricket growing up, but I literally uh, apart from that sort of little physical mark at the base of my spine, I don't feel as though I've been hard done by in any way by it.
Mm. And is there any risk in running or I mean you mentioned rugby there, but any other sport in anything kind of happening to your spine these days?
I treat it as no. So I've not held back from doing anything, and certainly never been told that I shouldn't do anything. Apart from, my mother was really keen that I didn't get walloped about on the rugby field.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just sort of gone about life, and a lot of the time I just completely forget about it, and every now and again I just go, oh yeah, I'm lucky enough to be able to walk. And it's a great pick me up for any time I ever feel like, life's getting on top of me or whatever. I'm here and I can do a lot of things.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and it's so cool that you were um, able to have that operation, and that it made that huge difference to you. Thinking of your little story there about running the 100 meters, I remember when I was at school and I was sort of on the edge of every sports team without being amazing and walking into them all. And my teacher decided it'd be a good idea to just chuck me into 100 meters at a county event, and I've
Oh,
never come last in something by such a huge distance. It was ridiculous. I imagine I was around about that 19-second mark as well, probably.
oh.
Um,
I don't think I've beaten that time since. But,
Yeah, that's it. So, aside from that 100 meter showing, was running something you did at school, or was it something you picked up later on?
definitely later on.
Mm,
School sports were usually sort of the rugby, football, and occasionally you get a bit of cricket in the summer if you're lucky.
mm.
Um, And I think usually like every 4 years the Olympics would come on the TV, or I'd be seeing the London Marathon or something like that. And I'd think like, oh yeah, I must try that. Um, but I think I didn't really know what I was doing. So maybe I'd go out and just kind of hurtle down the road for,
Yeah.
for half a minute and go, oh no, forget that. That was far too hard. So it it wasn't really until I hit about 29, 30 that I sort of got into running more seriously and finally figured out how to do it, which is, as you know, it's just, get used to it first before you start thinking about trying to go at any particular pace.
Mm. But you've gone on, as we said in the intro there, to do some very serious running in terms of marathons and ultra marathons. Was that always an obvious step for you, or did you get? I suppose we all get forced into this thing where we start out doing 5K and before we know it, we're doing an ultra.
Yeah, well, when I first began in work, there was talk about the Great South Run, which is a 10 miler,
Mm.
um, and everybody was saying, "Oh, yeah, let's sign up to do that." And so lots of us signed up. And then on the actual day of the event, I think only two of us had stuck with it, and everybody was complaining about their knees or
Yeah,
the string had gone in their leg or something like that. But so I kind of followed through over the course of about sort of 4 or 5 months training up to 10 miles. And then it was just sort of a natural step to look at some half marathons. We had one in my local town. And then, of course, you've always got one eye on like marathons, particularly they keep putting that one on the telly every April.
yeah.
So, yeah, I never really thought when I started that that's what I wanted to do. I just sort of kind of fell in love with that sort of flow state you can get into when you feel like you could run forever. Everything feels in
Mm.
harmony, and you're on a nice bit of road which is nice and flat, and you can just kind of tune out of what's going on around you and just slip into that flow.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it straight away, or was there ever that temptation to sort of go into work and go like everyone else? Oh, I think my knee might have gone. I don't really fancy this.
There was a bit of a transition going from as I started at the gym, just going on the treadmill and building up to sort of a mile, which was a massive milestone, for want of a better word. And then there was a transition to outdoor running, which was a bit of a kind of a reality check because you get wind and hills and traffic and youths and that sort of thing. But I think I pretty soon uh, thought to myself, I actually really enjoy doing this. Yeah, so I've been a runner my whole life. I just didn't realize.
Yeah, definitely. I think fair few people sort of find that, and we realise that once you maybe get beyond that thing at school where you're being forced to do it and it feels painful and you might not necessarily be the fastest or the best, that actually it can be hugely enjoyable. Now we mentioned that you've gone on and done four marathons. Which ones have you done?
I've actually done two twice. I did
Okay.
London in 2008 and 2015, and Abingdon Marathon. Do you know that one in Oxfordshire?
I've not done it, but I've heard it's a good one.
It's very good. Yeah, I did that in 2006, so that was my first one, and
Yeah.
again in 2018. And I'm half thinking about having another crack at that sometime soon.
Yeah. How did you find the difference between the two? Because obviously London is huge and massive crowds and
Wow.
packed and everything. And then Abingdon, much as it's a good event, is obviously not on that scale.
Yeah, so my first Abingdon, there was a lot of kind of running alone on country lanes, just kind of wishing I was somewhere else. And then London 2 years later was really fabulous. I remember just how kind of crazy I was feeling. There were people on the streets, and I was just yelling back at them and really having an amazing time with that one. And then revisiting that 7 years later. I don't know whether it obviously has got busier and busier, but I didn't
Mm.
enjoy that so much because I felt like the crowds had gone too far into, there's one bit where the both sides of the street were lined with kettlebells and people. Do I mean kettlebells? I don't think I do. That cowbells, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That would be
um,
dangerous if they had kettlebells.
Exactly, yeah, I didn't like that. And they were just, the ringing was incessant and the noise was so much. And when you're kind of 18 miles into something that's starting to hurt, the last thing you want is to be, surrounded with that. So
Yeah.
back to Abingdon then in 2018, and I really kind of, I sort of got to grips with what it feels like to run on your own and go through the pain barrier. So I probably enjoyed that one more.
Yeah. No, I find it really interesting with London. I've not managed to get in despite numerous ballot attempts. But I know from people who have that it just does seem to be getting busier and busier every year. And I guess there is that risk of them becoming a victim of their own success, or certainly for the race to no longer be a race where you can almost, not that every race has to be, but where you can go out and do a PB. It becomes almost a fun run because it's impossible for it to be anything else.
Yeah, it feels like it's maybe turning into Instagram and charity
Mm.
at the exclusion of, back in 2008, to enter, you had to sort of go to a running shop and ask the person behind the counter for a special magazine that you could fill in the form on the back.
Yeah.
And I think it was about 2012 they introduced the online entries, and it's just kind of exploded from there, really. And that, like you, the chances of getting in these days are minuscule. I think it's like probably about, last time I looked, it was about 1 in 50 for your chances of getting through on the ballot, and it's just gone mad again this year. So I hear they're talking about possibly having it over 2 days to maybe
Yeah.
double the amount of people they can have. But yeah, I don't fancy that one again. There's so many other great marathons out there and great organizers to support. I'd recommend anybody go and just find out what else is out there.
No, I think that's really good advice, actually. I mean, I can absolutely understand why anyone would want to do London at least once. It's that huge bucket list thing. If I will continue to enter the ballot, and if I get in, I will do it. But equally, I probably wouldn't worry about going for a charity place. Not that it's not amazing to do that, and it raises such a huge amount of money for charity. But exactly as you said, there are just so many other amazing events out there, whether it's big city ones like Manchester recently, or Edinburgh, which I have done, which was this weekend in the atrocious heat, bless them all, or smaller ones like you say, Abingdon, and getting out on those. I mean, I did the some trail marathons, or a trail marathon. I'm doing Beachy Head hopefully later this year if that all goes to
Awesome.
plan. And I did the Eden Project one as well, which is it's far smaller. You're running up in the middle of nowhere. There's no one else around you, but it's beautiful and it's a completely different experience. So yeah, I think you're probably right, Ian.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And one race which I think is probably a bit like that, which I'm really excited to talk to you about, which I think you've done because I saw it in the pictures you sent over, is I can never say it, race from Meriden, which is just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. That was, I didn't do I did about 10 yards of running in that one actually.
Oh,
But it's a fantastic experience. So
yeah.
I shared the link with my son uh, uh, about 6 months before the event and said, I'm thinking of doing this. And I was expecting him to go, oh yeah, cool, lad, go for it. And he said,
Yeah.
I'll do that with you.
Right.
And he's a student at the moment, and he doesn't run, so he didn't do a step of training towards being able to run. So we decided to just walk it.
Okay.
Um, but for anybody who doesn't know, you start at midnight on a green in the middle of this little village, which is kind of officially in the middle of the UK,
Yeah.
and then you've got 24 hours to get as far away as you can on foot. We all dressed up in orange boiler suits, as you might have seen in the picture,
Yeah.
and we just set off. He was hungover, he had tonsillitis, he was not in the best state, but he still managed to get through 19 miles with a McDonald's stop at about 3 a.m. and asleep on a bench. He slept in the car while me and my wife just tried to wake him up. So he struggled through to 19 miles. And at that point, then about sort of 9 o'clock in the morning, I left him to get a lift home with my lovely wife. And
Yeah.
I managed to get out to 35 miles then just by sort of slogging it out. But
Good.
round about then was when I started. I tried to have a little bit of a run, but my legs were already sort of 19 miles of walking, and they said, "No, we're not doing this today." So, but yeah, it's an amazing experience, and you go from this point where there are hundreds of you all gathered around on this little green to within about 10 minutes, you don't see anybody else again.
Yeah.
We met a couple of people in McDonald's who'd kind of taken a slightly different route and got to it. But then really you are totally on your own, dressed in an orange boiler suit, walking through villages.
Yeah, because
Um,
there's no set route, is there? You just basically orienteer your way to as far away as possible.
Yeah, yeah, there are some popular ones. I mean, the event's been going long enough now that people do follow sort of routes that are well known.
Okay.
But we just sort of headed in a vague direction of where we live. We went through Coventry at about 2 a.m. or something like that. So there were lots of people getting kicked out of the nightclub. So that was quite an interesting experience. But yeah, yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
I just always love the sound of that one. It sounds so completely different from something like London or from these other mainstream events that people have heard of. And I just think, yeah, such a cool event. And I suppose that is part of what the running community is, isn't it? It's all these different things coming together. And I'm guessing that's kind of what you try and achieve with your own little part of the running world in terms of Fetch Everyone. So tell everyone about Fetch Everyone, how the idea came about, because you've come to running fairly late, and then suddenly you're starting your own site.
Yeah, so I started with a spreadsheet to log all the runs that I was doing. And back in those days, we didn't have the internet was nowhere near the thing that it is now. So I was emailing that spreadsheet back and forth to work and back to home again to so I could update it if I was running in my lunch hours or whatever.
Yeah,
And then because my job was a web developer, so I thought, well, I'll make a little website so I don't have to keep faffing about with emails. So I built a little tool, and then I started inviting other people to use it, and they just sort of came in their droves from the old Runners World forum, which is now defunct.
yeah.
And as they came along, I was encouraging them to say, like, what can I add to this to make it better for you? What tools can I provide you to? So it went from just logging your times and distances into, making a note of all the races you've done, uploading images. We developed a forum. There's blogging. There are tons of stuff that came about from people just making suggestions, and I was just coding it as fast as I could. My day job kind of took a little bit of a walloping after that, but yeah. It's a long story, but I'll try and cut it short. In 2007, I got approached by Natmag Rodale. They're the company that owns Runner's World and Men's Health and that sort of stable of magazines. They wanted to buy the site from me. I think I had about 6,000 users at that point. So for a period from 2007 through to 2016, they officially owned the site and employed me to work on it for them.
Right.
Um, but then in 2016, I think they realized it wasn't going to make them any money. And Strava had just kind of loomed over the horizon like a massive orange venture capitalist beast. Um, and so they sort of just gave the site back to me and gave me a small redundancy payout and said, right, off you go. So for the last 10 years, I've been running the site independently again, which has been really scary at times, but also
Mm.
quite wonderful because I just feel like I have the freedom to go in whatever direction I want with it now.
Yeah. And were you surprised initially, I suppose, when you started it? It started out as plotting your own runs to suddenly have all these people coming on board and going, I want to tell you my story and I want to show you my pictures and all this sort of thing.
It was lovely, yeah. They came, they brought their ideas, they introduced me to races I'd never heard of before, and encouraged me to run further and run faster and explore different places. And it felt like there was a whole new part of my life developing that just hadn't been there before. So it was really wonderful for me, and also feeling like I helped all these people a little bit as well. So I feel my head swelling at this point. Yeah.
I guess the other thing around it, as you kind of hinted to there, is you suddenly found yourself up against the likes of Strava. We talked about Instagram and the influencers on there, sort of hoovering up anybody who's vaguely into running and so on. how have you managed to kind of keep it going, keep a community going, and I suppose continue to offer something a little bit more driven and presumably community driven?
Yeah, so my theory has always been that, and I'm trying to sort of stay in tune with what the internet was originally for, which was about collaboration, sharing,
Mm.
for the greater good. So I've always made it clear that the website is, and any part of this website is free for anyone to use. Whereas sites like Strava, and I'm not sort of singling them out, but they have a paywall where if you want all the best bits and bobs, you have to pay, otherwise you don't get those at all.
Mm.
Whereas I've said, right, you can have access to all of those. Um, in some ways, it won't be as polished or as lovely as something that has 200 staff and $200 million of venture capital behind it, but it is honest, hardworking stuff, and you're free to use it. All I ask in return is that you consider supporting me to do this because it's helping a lot of people, and it's nice to have that alternative to the sort of corporate version where you have to pay to play. And so instead, I have voluntary donations, which is, I know
Yeah.
you have a similar thing where you say, like, you're free to listen. If you can help us, that's great. Wikipedia do it, The Guardian do it.
Yeah.
It's a proven thing that works, that hopefully leaves people with a better feeling. Um, and alongside that, I've always just tried to listen to people and just keep on trying to push the boundaries of what I can offer.
Mm. And um, asking this question without the intention of making your head grow any bigger, but do you also feel that there's something more honest and more in tune with what running is really about to what you do compared to what we see now, which is this glossy, uber cool, but not necessarily 100% real kind of thing that we see on Instagram in particular?
There's definitely this kind of veneer of airbrushed nonsense that you see out there that
Yeah.
yeah, my Instagram feed is full of it, although I try to fight it off. Um, and I saw there was some kind of you've probably seen this article in a dozen different forms. 10 tips for running a marathon or whatever.
Yeah.
And alongside all the stuff like, don't wear your shoes for the first time on the day and that kind of thing. There was one that talked about, like, this is not an opportunity for you to make content. Um, and back in the day, that didn't need saying.
Mm.
You might get a photo of you at some point that a friend has taken, or the race photographer or someone snapped you coming over the line or something like that. But it feels like these days it's all about a lot of people saying, wanting that attention. Um, yeah, so it's it's not something I subscribe to. I make my own Instagram videos and I look at myself and go, my God, look how terrible I look. But I try to get over that because I hope that people see that, yeah, I'm a real kind of middle-aged man just trying to do my best, and there are a lot of people out there in that situation.
Yeah, I do think it's a real balancing act sometimes these days because for me as well, I don't want to be an influencer. I've got no ability to do that anyway. I don't want to really see myself on videos, but I will end up on the odd one, and obviously on these podcasts as well. But I mean, you do kind of have to do it to get yourself out there, but also, you know, these people. Uh, they have an ability to encourage more people into the sport, and that is a good thing. As long as they're also then telling the truth about it, but that's a good thing too. So you've sort of got these two competing things of everything's glossy and amazing and blah 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 blah, like we just said, but also encouraging more and more people into the sport, and perhaps it not being as elitist as at times it was 20, 30 years ago when you spoke earlier about having to go and get your magazine from a running shop to enter the London Marathon, which I kind of get what you're saying, but there's also that thing of it's less accessible. It's more gatekeeping previously than it perhaps is now.
Yeah. Yeah, I see some good stuff out there. There's the one I saw recently was posting the average times that people run a 5K, 10K half marathon and whatever, just as a kind of like, d don't worry about these people who are claiming they can run a sub 20
Yeah.
because they're in the minority rather than, that's what should be expected of you. So there are people out there sort of looking after the broader community. There's do you know Flancy, the clothing brand?
Yes. Yeah.
They share a lot of positive stuff about people with different body types, and they're always encouraging everybody to go out and do whatever you can. So there are good people out there doing good stuff on the old interweb. It's just a shame sometimes that the shinier ones get to the top of the feed, but we just keep at it, don't we?
Yeah, for sure. Looking at um, the website for Fetch Everyone, I hope this doesn't come across as in a derogatory way, but it's kind of a inverted commas old-fashioned website. I mean, it looks good, but it looks like something you may have had in the 2000s rather than now. Is that a deliberate thing? I hope I haven't really insulted you there.
Oh, when you said you're making my head bigger earlier, you just shrunk it back down again there. No, I mean, I do literally everything. I don't have any team behind me doing the graphic design or anything like that. My wife
Mm,
will come and mop my brow and check on the temperature of my ears occasionally to
yeah,
make sure I'm not overcooking myself. But everything you see is what I've created. So yeah, the design is a little bit kind of old school, I think, but in a way, once you get used to it, it kind of you can work out where everything is. But yeah, I feel like I'm constantly trying to evolve it. A, a couple of years ago, I think I was told that it looked like it was from the 90s. So early 2000s, I'm taking that as a little improvement. So I'm working in the right direction.
yeah. I suppose I just asked that really in terms of like because you could easily have just gone, well, I'm going to perhaps change this over and just get a WordPress site or go onto
Cool.
Substack and just make it look like it does. But do you know what I mean? Let them do the work for you, but you've kept it honest, I guess, and that's what I think is what you're doing overall.
Yeah, there's so much in the way of bespoke functionality on there. There's so many tools that
Yeah,
I think it would be a lifetime's work to convert that into something up to date. So I just try and focus on making the buttons nice and big, making the text
yeah.
nice and clear, and perhaps you do have to work a little bit more to get into the detail of it. But yeah, I guess that's a nature's filtering process, and we get the people who are really sort of committed. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is a ridiculous amount of content on there. It would just even going across the tabs at the top from training plans to where people can go and race and the blogs and and these leaderboards as well, which are quite cool, aren't they? That which encourage I think people from wow, all sorts of things actually to let's have a look at some of these leaderboards. Race time percentiles, fastest fetches, most popular watches, streak league table. This is like the part run challenges on some kind of heat, isn't it?
Yeah, it's well, it's 22 years of either me having an idea and going, yeah, I'm going to build that page today, or somebody else from the site saying, hey, and could you make me a page that does this? And I've gone usually, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So there's tons of stuff in there, and that's part of the challenge really is to sort of try and mulch it into a format where that's all accessible because you can get lost in rabbit holes which is not great. But yeah, the more you delve, the more you'll find, I think.
Mm. Is it sort of fair to say that this is a website for real running tragics, if that's the right term? People who are really into it, they like their stats, they like to know their races, their obscure races as well as the main ones.
Uh, in a word, yes. Yeah, I can't deny it. There's some proper statos on you. There are even a few people who I think, how are you doing that? But yeah. I mean, why not? I grew up playing a lot of cricket, and I don't know how much you know about cricket, but there are a lot of stats involved in cricket, and
Yeah.
I just kind of brought that over with me. So yeah, if I can make you a stat for it, I will.
Yeah, well, no, I absolutely say that as a compliment, Ian, as a fellow very amateur cricketer, enjoying every little bit of statistics that you can build into it is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Is there any big future plans for developing the website? What's next?
So at the moment, I'm sort of developing a GPS game called Fetchworld.
Yeah,
You might see that under it's under the games tab, of which there are probably about a dozen different games you can play whilst running.
yeah,
In this one, there are you tell it where you are in the world, and then it pops up a lot of different things, a bit like Pokemon. But
yeah,
I started this idea before Pokemon, just saying. um, and you have to kind of go and run to those things and collect them, and there's lots of um, pitfalls, like if you don't have certain things in your inventory when you go to run and see the duck will bite you and you'll lose 10 points. And there are cursed rings that you'll pick up if you run over them, and you've got to find a volcano to drop those in, otherwise you'll lose more points and that sort of thing. And you're competing with other players to find resources and things like that. So I'm at the moment I'm kind of building that game, adding new features to it on a fairly regular basis. So that's something having a lot of fun with at the moment.
yeah.
Um, and just kind of always trying to push the analysis um, to try and get more insights that will help people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're looking at the analysis, I suppose. Obviously we talked about Strava. We'll go back to Strava, I suppose. They're very much into. I mean, I always joke about it here, like we don't care about your VO2 max, you care about we care about your story kind of thing. But how important do you think it is for people to be able to track those stats in order to improve their running?
I think it doesn't have to be VO2 max, or something that is purely based on um, you know, your physique or your abilities as a runner.
Mm,
But people do seem to like having some sort of quest to encourage them. So another thing that I sort of highlighted again recently was we've got a map that shows you all of the trig points and the mountains and the Wainwrights and the Dodds and
yeah.
the Ethels, and people like to go collecting those. We've got a game where you can explore different zones and try and take ownership of zones. Um, there are individual benchmarks for 400 meters, 5K, whatever, that you're just competing against yourself and trying to get yourself up a table against your own recent best times, that sort of thing. So for everybody, it's a different thing, but there's
Mm.
usually some kind of number that people are chasing. So the fact that we've got so many sort of gives people, a goal to suit.
Yeah. Well, I think we do ultimately, all of us, gamify running to some extent or another, whether it's looking at those stats on Strava or on your site, or what our PBs are at certain races, or monitoring our heart rate as we try to run in whatever zone we're trying to run in. Because otherwise, we'd all just head out the door with no kit at all, never speak to anybody else, run and come back and feel a little bit fitter. But we don't just do that, do we?
No, no, no. We're yeah, the number of people who actually share their achievements online is, just shows you that, wherever they're sharing them. We're proud of what we're achieving. And maybe we need that little bit of recognition as well, wherever it comes from.
Mm.
Um, so I I'd hope that real places, and I'm not saying any other places are not real, but a real online community, you'll get that in a personal way, rather
Mm.
than just sort of the dopamine hit of seeing some likes climbing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not. We all like a little bit of kudos here and there, but actually, a proper conversation is a bit more important, isn't it?
Yeah, there are occasional words that just give me a bit of a gag reflex.
The anti kudos website.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Just looking back at on your own story again now, very quickly. I suppose, are there any next steps or any next events coming up for you at the moment?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of the cricket season at the moment, so I'm kind of keeping things on a bit of a simmer. But I am thinking of an autumn marathon,
Okay.
maybe Abingdon again, just because it is relatively close to us. It's I know the course pretty well, and I just like something to aim for. And who knows after that? I've flipped between wanting to go longer and dipping my toes into doing another ultra,
Yeah.
and then coming back to sort of improving my 10K, 5K times. But at the moment, I've got a marathon, but I haven't confirmed that I'm going to do that, even with myself. So I'm still just thinking about it. So I've got a little calf tweak at the moment, which so I haven't run at all this week, but I'm hoping that I'll get my feet back under me and then make a decision pretty soon because I think I've got about 20 weeks until Abingdon, so I need to sort of make my mind up pretty soon on that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the great things about running is all the different distances and challenges that are in there. But for amateur runners, it can interestingly kind of jump around between that. Oh, I'm doing a marathon this time, and then I'm trying to get my 5K time faster, and the two things don't always work well together, do they?
No, exactly. Although I was listening to the previous episode, and it was interesting that the lady who'd just gone and done the run all the way around Britain had come and
Yeah.
got a 5K PB, I think, hadn't she? Did I remember that right?
I can't, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I know that she certainly got a very good 5K time, which she didn't expect at the end of such a ridiculously long run.
Yeah, that happens though. I think you put all the effort into absorbing all that pain over such a long period of time, and
Yeah,
then all of a sudden you've got like 20 or 30 minutes in a park run, and you think, right, well, I can cope with how much this is hurting because
yeah.
I know it's only going to last for this amount of time. So in a way, they do sort of complement each other in some ways.
And it's that I guess it's that perfect zone two training or whatever those long slow runs that we're always being told to do and so on, and it can make such a difference. It's such a funny thing. A number of people I've said like actually the way to get faster is to just go out for longer at a slower pace, and they look at you originally as if they're mad, and then they'll come back about 2 months later and go, do you know what, you were right on that. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
It's almost kind of pointless telling people when particularly new runners and they're going through that kind of like I'm getting a PB this week, I'm getting one next week as well, and they're keeping on doing that.
Yeah.
And you just kind of need to wait for them to hit that plateau where they're not getting any improvement. And you say, right, you found your level now, so here's what you actually need to do to. But that run slower to get faster. That's kind of like that's the conundrum that's been around for forever, really, isn't it? But it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly not claiming that one as my own.
Oh no, no, yeah.
Just to finish off, Ian, tell everyone where they can find Fetch Everyone, how they can become part of your community, and yeah, play all the games, read all the blogs, enter all the races.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's fetcheveryone.com. If you've got a Garmin or a Coros or a Polar or a Sunto or a Fitbit or any of the sort of major watches, you can link it up. So if you are on the orange place, you don't need to leave that. You can just sync your data up to Fetch Everyone, see what you get out of that in your training log when you've logged a few runs. If you like it, you can get an export of all your data from either Strava or Garmin, and then just import that. So you all of a sudden you've got like years of data to look back on Fetch,
Mm.
and then just go exploring on the site. It can be a bit formidable because there's a lot in there, and it's probably not the most user friendly in places. But on every single page, there is a help button on the top right hand corner. If you go to that and you send me a message, say, I'm lost with this or that, I will get back in touch with you. I read them all. It's not like I have a chat bot or a team of people who don't really care. It's me and I do
Yeah,
care. So
yeah.
yeah, come and find me.
And I guess that's part of the overall pitch, isn't it? Why people should leave. or at least not only use Strava and those other things and come over and give Fetch a go?
Yeah, I've always been tried to be open to talking to people. If I think back to how it all began, then getting those ideas from people for new suggestions and getting feedback on things that I developed to help me kind of make them work better. That was what made the site what it was in the first place. So I've tried to never lose sight of that. Um, so yeah, come and tell me what you want what the site to be.
Fantastic. Well, Ian, thank you so much for telling everyone about Fetch Everyone, about your own running journey, and for coming and sharing your story on the Running Tales podcast.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to you for having me on.
Folks, thank you so much for joining Ian and I today on the Running Tales podcast. Please do go and check out Fetch Everyone, fetcheveryone.com. There is everything and more that you could want on there. And yeah, leave Strava behind and go to Fetch Everyone.
Brilliant.
And while you're leaving Strava behind, come to Running Tales as well, because this is all part of getting out there and finding a little bit more of hopefully some authentic stuff in the running world. We're on Substack, we're on podcasts, and yeah, we hope to see you all there. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Running Tales podcast.